Let's step into post-war Britain, the 1950s and 60s, a time when theatre finally opened its doors to the real voices of the working class. This powerful movement was called Kitchen Sink Realism, and yes, its development during this very period has been asked in exam. Kitchen Sink Realism broke away from polished, upper-class drawing room dramas. Instead, it focused on the gritty domestic lives of ordinary people, usually living in small flats, struggling with love, poverty, and identity. The main characters were often angry young men, frustrated individuals rebelling against social inequality and emotional stagnation. That term, angry young men, has also been noted in exam, so make sure you remember it. The plays dealt fearlessly with controversial issues like abortion, unemployment, and homelessness, themes that had rarely appeared on the British stage before. The style was raw, unfiltered, and emotionally charged, a sharp contrast to the polished, well-made plays of earlier decades. And yes, that stylistic opposition to escapism has been mentioned in exam. Most of these dramas were set in the industrial north of England, written in the language of the people, complete with local slang and accents. Critics often trace the cinematic roots of the movement back to the film It Always Rains on Sunday, released in 1947, and that connection has appeared in exam as well. But the true breakthrough came in 1956 with John Osborne's Look Back in Anger, the first major kitchen sink play, and again, this title and year have been asked in exam. The play's one-room setting in the English Midlands, filled with tension between Jimmy Porter, his wife Alison, and her friend Helena, became a symbol of youthful frustration and social disillusionment. Its claustrophobic domestic realism, one small flat, one collapsing marriage, mirrored the entire mood of post-war Britain. Among the writers who carried this movement forward, one name stands out: Sir Arnold Wesker, an English dramatist whose career has often been tested in exam. Wesker wrote over 50 plays, along with essays, short stories, and journalism. His works have been translated into more than 20 languages and performed around the world. Interestingly, Wesker's inspiration for his play The Kitchen came from his own hotel job experience, and that real-life detail has also been noted in exam. It was there he met his future wife, Dusty, a story that feels straight out of his own drama. His plays often explored themes of love, self-discovery, and political disillusionment. One of his most important works, Chicken Soup with Barley, was written in 1956 and first staged in 1958 at the Belgrade Theatre in Coventry. Both these facts have been asked in exam. The play later moved to the Royal Court Theatre in London, becoming one of the landmark post-war plays in British theatre. Chicken Soup with Barley portrays the life of the Khan family, a working-class Jewish household in London, as their political ideals slowly crumble over 2 turbulent decades. The mother, Sarah Khan, is strong and socialist. The father, Harry Khan, is weak and inconsistent, while their children, Ada and Ronnie, represent youth, rebellion, and idealism. The play explores political disillusionment during events like the Second World War, Stalinism, and the Hungarian Revolution. The story continues with Roots, first performed in 1959, the second play of Wesker's trilogy, and yes, that connection to Chicken Soup with Barley has been asked in exam. Roots follows B.T. Bryant, a young working-class woman from Norfolk, as she struggles to find her own voice and self-confidence. It's written in the Norfolk dialect, and its realism firmly identifies it as a kitchen sink drama. The trilogy concludes with I'm Talking About Jerusalem, and that final installment has also been mentioned in exam. Together, these 3 plays trace the collapse of idealism and the rise of personal identity in post-war Britain. Critics admired Wesker for his emotional authenticity and his ability to connect personal relationships with political change. His plays, first nurtured at the Royal Court Theatre under George Devine and later under William Gaskill, represent the voice of an era when theatre finally looked at life not through aristocratic mirrors, but through kitchen windows. So, when you think of kitchen sink realism, remember this: It brought the real Britain onto the stage with its anger, humor, poverty, and pride. It spoke for the people who had been ignored for too long, and through writers like John Osborne and Arnold Wesker, it redefined what realism meant in modern drama. Let's move into the world of post-war British drama, a period defined by political anger, social realism, and bold experimentation. Two powerful voices who reshaped theatre during this era are Edward Bond and John Arden. We'll start with Edward Bond, born in 1934. Bond was not just a playwright, he was also a theatre director, poet, theorist, and screenwriter. His works combine poetic depth with biting political critique. He believed theatre should never merely entertain, but rather bring about change in society, a statement that has been noted in exam. Bond rose to prominence with plays that shocked audiences yet forced them to confront uncomfortable truths about violence, authority, and moral decay. His early success came with Saved in 1965, followed by Narrow Road to the Deep North in 1968. That title has been asked in exam. Other acclaimed works include Lear, 1971, The Sea, 1973, The Fool, 1975, Restoration, 1981, and the War Trilogy, 1985. All of these dramatize the tension between individual conscience and corrupt systems, and several of those titles like Lear, The Fool, and Restoration have appeared in exam. Now, Lear, perhaps Bond's most famous play, was written in 1971, and that date has been asked in exam. The play is a radical rewrite of Shakespeare's King Lear, transforming the tragic monarch into a paranoid autocrat who builds a massive wall to keep out imagined enemies. This reinterpretation too has been tested in exam. Bond uses Lear's downfall to expose political hypocrisy and social cruelty. Unlike Shakespeare, he isn't exploring universal tragedy, but rather making a socialist critique of modern society. He wanted audiences to question systems of power, war, and obedience. In this version, Lear's daughters, Bodice and Fontenelle, rebel and trigger a brutal war. Lear is imprisoned, blinded, and haunted by the ghost of the gravedigger's boy, a man murdered for showing him kindness. Eventually, Lear tries to dismantle his own wall, dying in the process, his death symbolizing both hope and practical activism. Meanwhile, Cordelia becomes a Stalinist dictator, showing how idealism can turn into tyranny. Critic Hilde Klein once remarked that Shakespeare's answers are not valid today, and that's exactly what Bond dramatizes, a modern Lear for a world torn by politics, fear, and ideology. Now, let's turn to John Arden, another major dramatist of the same generation. Born in 1930, Arden emerged in the mid-20th century as a fiercely independent playwright known for combining poetry, songs, and colloquial speech. He was deeply connected with the English stage company at the Royal Court Theatre, a fact that has been mentioned in exam. Arden's plays are deliberately ambiguous conflicts are left unresolved, inviting the audience to think rather than passively agree. His most celebrated work, Sergeant Musgrave's Dance from 1959, is widely regarded as his masterpiece, and this title has been asked in exam. The play examines war, violence, and moral conscience through the lens of a soldier's rebellion. Arden was profoundly influenced by Bertolt Brecht and the techniques of epic theatre, another topic that has been noted in exam. Like Brecht, he wanted his plays to awaken political awareness rather than evoke sentimentality. Among his other works are Live Like Pigs, The Workhouse, Donkey, Armstrong's Last Goodnight, Left-Handed Liberty, and The Happy Haven. Of these, Live Like Pigs has been directly referenced in exam, so keep that one highlighted. Both Bond and Arden belong to a generation that transformed British theatre, replacing drawing room comedies with intellectual rebellion and social conscience. They pushed drama beyond entertainment into the realm of ethics, politics, and truth, challenging audiences to look inward and act outward. Let's begin with Alan Sillitoe, one of the most distinctive literary voices to emerge from post-war Britain. Born in 1928, Sillitoe became known as one of the so-called angry young men of the 1950s, a group of writers who gave voice to the frustrations of Britain's working class. This association has been asked in exam. Interestingly, Sillitoe himself disliked the label, just as most writers of that group did, but his work certainly captured that same raw, rebellious energy. He is best remembered for his groundbreaking debut novel Saturday Night and Sunday Morning, published in 1958, and yes, that novel has been asked in exam. It follows the restless factory worker Arthur Seaton, a character who perfectly represents the anger and vitality of post-war youth. Before that success, Sillitoe had written the powerful short story The Loneliness of the Long-Distance Runner, which explored isolation and defiance in a young reform school runner. This story became even more famous when it was adapted into a film, and that adaptation too has appeared in exam questions. Sillitoe continued to write throughout his life. His later novels included The Death of William Posters from 1965, The Widower's Son in 1977, and Birthday in 2001, and that last title has also been noted in exam. His short story collections, such as The Ragman's Daughter, 1963, Men, Women and Children, 1974, and The Second Chance, 1980, revealed his deep empathy for ordinary lives told with honesty and grit. The Ragman's Daughter was even turned into a film in the 1970s, confirming his influence on both literature and cinema. Sillitoe's style combined realism with rebellion, a working-class perspective unafraid to challenge authority or convention. His voice helped define a new era of British fiction, one that demanded authenticity and truth. Now let's turn to another remarkable figure of modern British theatre, Peter Shaffer. Born in Liverpool in 1926, Peter Levin Shaffer was a twin, and his brother Anthony Shaffer would also become a famous playwright. Their family moved to London in 1936, where Peter developed a love for both literature and music. Before his writing career took off, Shaffer worked as a Bevan boy in the coal mines during World War II, a government program that sent young men to support the mining industry. Later, he studied history at Cambridge University, where he also edited the prestigious literary magazine Granta. His first book was a detective story titled The Woman in the Wardrobe, co-written with his brother under the pseudonym Peter Anthony, and this early work has been mentioned in exam. His first play, The Salt Land, was broadcast on the BBC in 1954, marking the start of a brilliant theatrical career. Shaffer's first major success came with Five Finger Exercise in 1958, which won the Evening Standard Award. He followed it with historical and experimental works like The Royal Hunt of the Sun, 1964, about the Spanish conquest of Peru, and the innovative farce Black Comedy, 1967, famous for its pitch-black stage concept where the audience sees what the characters cannot. Then came his greatest triumphs, Equus in 1973, a dark psychological drama about a boy's obsession with horses, and Amadeus, which premiered in 1979. The play Amadeus has been asked in exam, so make sure you note that. Amadeus was inspired by Pushkin's 1830 play Mozart and Salieri, which Rimsky-Korsakov later turned into an opera in 1897. Shaffer reimagined that rivalry between the genius Mozart and the envious court composer Salieri as a profound meditation on creativity, jealousy, and divine injustice. The play first premiered at the Royal National Theatre, London in 1979 and later won the 1981 Tony Award. Its 1984 film adaptation, directed by Miloš Forman, went on to win 8 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Screenplay for Shaffer. Shaffer continued to experiment with plays like Yonadab 1985, Lettuce and Lovitch 1987, and his final work, The Gift of the Gorgon, in 1993. He passed away in 2016, leaving behind a legacy that united intelligence, theatrical innovation, and emotional power. Together, writers like Alan Sillitoe and Peter Shaffer represent two sides of post-war British creativity. Sillitoe gave voice to working-class realism, while Shaffer brought psychological and philosophical depth to the modern stage. Both reshaped the English literary landscape of the 20th century, each in their own unforgettable way. Let's turn our attention to Sir Tom Stoppard, one of the most brilliant dramatists of the modern age, witty, intellectual, and endlessly inventive. He was born in Czechoslovakia in 1937, and this very detail that he was Czech-born has been asked in exam. His family fled Nazi occupation during World War II, and young Stoppard spent a few years in Darjeeling, India from 1943 to 1946 before finally settling in Britain. Stoppard's early career began not on stage but in journalism. He worked as a reporter and drama critic, experiences that sharpened his eye for dialogue, irony, and human contradictions. He went on to become one of the most celebrated playwrights of the National Theatre, known across the world for his quick wit, wordplay, and philosophical depth. In 1997, Stoppard was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II, a recognition of his immense contribution to literature and theatre. Among his most famous plays are Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, Jumpers, Travesties, Arcadia, The Real Thing, The Invention of Love, The Coast of Utopia, Rock and Roll, and Leopoldstadt. That's quite a list, but remember, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead and Travesties have been asked in exam more than once, so mark them carefully. Stoppard also worked as a screenwriter, penning scripts for several iconic films: Brazil in 1985, Empire of the Sun in 1987, The Russia House in 1990, and Shakespeare in Love in 1998. A movie fact that has been noted in exam. Later came Enigma in 2001 and Anna Karenina in 2012. Now, let's look at the play that first brought Stoppard worldwide fame, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. Written in 1966, and this date has been asked in exam, the play is an absurdist tragicomedy that reimagines two minor characters from Shakespeare's Hamlet. Here's something fascinating. The setting of the play is Denmark, and that simple but specific fact has also been asked in exam. The entire structure of Stoppard's play is a kind of inversion of Hamlet. Instead of focusing on the Prince of Denmark, Stoppard tells the story through the bewildered eyes of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, two courtiers trying to make sense of events that are beyond their understanding. Hamlet himself becomes a secondary figure, appearing only occasionally, while the main action unfolds in the margins of Shakespeare's tragedy. The tone shifts constantly between humor and dread. The duo tries to reason through fate, chance, and death, yet everything they do feels meaningless, predetermined by the script of Hamlet. Their conversations echo the existential absurdity found in writers like Beckett and Ionesco. The two men even witness the play within a play, The Murder of Gonzago, performed by a traveling troupe aboard a ship, one of many layers of theatre within theatre. Soon, they are sent to escort Hamlet to England with a sealed letter, but Hamlet secretly replaces the letter with one ordering their own execution. The ship is attacked by pirates, Hamlet escapes, and the two friends, now doomed by fate, accept their end with quiet resignation, uttering the Latin phrase "Quo fata ferunt," meaning "whither the fates carry us." The play closes with a chilling echo of Hamlet's final scene, the ambassador's line, "Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead." Next, let's turn to another of Stoppard's masterpieces, Travesties, written in 1974. The play centers on Henry Carr, a minor British consular official who looks back with very unreliable memory on his time in Zurich during the First World War. Now, this is where Stoppard's genius really shines. In this single play, Carr recalls meeting three giants of modern culture: James Joyce, who is writing Ulysses, Vladimir Lenin, planning the Russian Revolution, and Tristan Tzara, founder of the Dada art movement. These encounters are all filtered through Carr's muddled recollections, turning the story into a brilliant mix of history, comedy, and parody. Carr's confusion blurs reality with fiction, and this allows Stoppard to weave in entire scenes and characters from Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest. Carr himself once acted in that play, and his memories overlap with Wilde's witty characters like Gwendolen and Cecily. So, Travesties becomes both a tribute and a parody to Wilde, to Joyce, and to modern art itself. The play brims with linguistic playfulness, puns, limericks, music hall rhythms, and even a parody of the old vaudeville song Mr. Gallagher and Mr. Sheen. Beneath the comedy lies a serious question: how does art relate to history? What is the artist's duty in times of war and chaos? Stoppard doesn't give us a single answer. Instead, he lets wit, irony, and absurdity collide, inviting us to think as we laugh.